So let us, at 17 minutes past 8, turn to substance and in more detail now of the latest apparent U-turn from the government, the revisiting of the case of the WASPy women. These are the women who were promised compensation for not being properly informed about pension changes. Labour backing that campaign when they were in opposition, then going a bit cold on it and then dropping it once they got into power. Now, though, opening the door again, it seems, just as the High Court was about to begin hearing a case appealing against the ban on paying out the money. The cost, if it is paid, is large, is £10 billion, possibly a bit more. Some critics of the WASPy Women campaign have said that money would be better spent elsewhere. But let us talk to Rebecca Hilsenrath, who's on the line, who is the Health Ombudsman Chief Executive, who was the chair when the Ombudsman made the recommendation of compensation being paid, which indeed it did, and also to Angela Madden, who's chair of the WASPy Women campaign. Both of you, good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning, Jeff.
Just get a sense, first of all, Rebecca Hilsenrath, that this feels like a real surprise and a sudden thing. Were you surprised when you heard it?
Well, maybe helpful just to go back, Justin. So when we investigated into the issue of the communication changes to state pension, and obviously this is not about this government, this goes back to many other governments a couple of decades ago, we discovered that communications had been fine up until about 2004. And then what happened, that there was a series of pieces of research which told the government that their communication strategies weren't working. After which they didn't take sufficient account of the need for targeted information. Critically, we found evidence that there was a 2007 report which the DWP commissioned, which found that 50% of affected women weren't aware of the changes. And for the benefit of your listeners, that was years before any sort of compensation effort. So these women had nothing to gain by saying that they weren't aware. Clearly, for whatever reason, the public awareness campaign hadn't reached them. There was acknowledged that there was a need after that for targeted communications, which they did undertake, but nearly 2.5 years later, the government subsequently acknowledged they got that wrong. They apologised. And they've offered to work with us to improve the service, all of which is good. But as you know, that they've declined the compensation piece.
Yeah, well, that's the thing, isn't it? They had said no. You had said pay the compensation. Mm-hmm. They had said no. So does the change surprise you?
Well, what I was going to say was our investigation identified evidence of this research piece in 2007. What we didn't actually see was the actual piece of research, and the government said it hadn't seen it either. And now what it's saying is it's identified that piece of research and it wants to go away and look at it and see, I guess, what the basis of the research was.
And do you accept
what the approach.
You accept that there was something that they didn't see that has now allowed them to change their mind?
The government isn't actually legally obliged to follow our recommendations. That's a matter for Parliament to hold them to account. But what it is required to do by law is to ensure that its decision-making is rational and evidence-based. So if it's going away to do that now...
Well, that's interesting, isn't it? Yeah, because I was saying there is a High Court case about to start, and you think they're getting their ducks in a row, and that actually they had no choice but to bear in mind this new evidence. Well, that's interesting. Thank you for that. Angela Madden, as I say, chair of the WASPy Women campaign, is also on the line. Were you surprised?
Yes, we were quite surprised. I mean, we've been campaigning for 10 years now, and the successive governments have fought us tooth and nail all the way. And of course, this government, very quickly into its tenure, decided not to follow the Ombudsman's recommendations, even though in opposition they had always been supportive of the WASPy campaign and our ask.
Pat McFadden, who is the relevant minister now, the Work and Pensions Secretary, said yesterday, retaking this decision should not be taken as an indication that government will necessarily decide that it should award financial redress. Do you think you are going to get it or you're not?
I haven't got a crystal ball. We're pleased that they're at least looking into it. We think we deserve compensation. It's our lived experience. Many of us only had 2 years' notice of an up to 6-year change in our state pension age. And that just left us floored, really, because it wasn't enough time to make any kind of decisions about our retirement 2 years before we expected it to start.
Although, what would you say then to Paul Johnson, formerly of the Institute for Fiscal Studies, who says government can cut benefits or raise taxes at a moment's notice? Given nearly 20 years' notice of an increase in pension age, apparently compensation may be due at a potential cost of billions to be paid by younger generations. He says that is ludicrous.
Well, I think what he's saying is ludicrous. We didn't get 20 years' notice. I actually worked full-time all my working life, and I worked for a government-owned company, the post office, right up until 2004. And every year I got a benefit statement from the post office pension fund telling me that all these benefits were in addition to the state pension I would receive at 60. Now, that was a government employer telling me that I was going to get a state pension at 60.
Right. So in spite of all the publicity that there was and the discussion of the age being raised, you're saying in the paperwork that it sent you, the government never mentioned it?
No, never mentioned it. I got an automated pension forecast unsolicited in 2005. Very helpful information, asking me if I'd saved enough for my pension, etc., etc. But nothing in that letter said there was a change to the state pension age.
Are you ready to do battle, as it were, with those who say, not just Paul Johnson, but others as well, who say, look, the government, given its fiscal constraints, if it does pay out this sum of money, is going to have to find it from some other pot. In other words, someone will suffer as a result of this money going to you and to the other WASPy women?
I'm absolutely ready. Where the government spends our money, and I was a taxpayer all my life, I'm still a taxpayer, where it spends our money is their choice. We've elected them on what they said they were going to spend it on. I mean, very recently, the government's decided to bring in some sort of ID scheme, and they immediately found 2 billion for that. So it's always a political choice. There is a limited amount of money, but the choice is the government's of where they put it. And at the moment, they are choosing against WASPy, even though they know that previous governments did the whole thing wrong in terms of the communication. And we suffered from that.
Angela Madden, chair of the WASPy Women campaign, and earlier Rebecca Hilsenrath. Thank you both.
It's 25.